Hello, hello, welcome everybody. I'm so glad we've come together. I know for some people it's lunch hour, so really appreciate you being here to talk about co-production. Certainly from my perspective, co-production is a huge part of all of our future, so it's really good to be able to talk about it again. Before we start, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the sponsor of this session, the Producers Alliance for Cinema and Television, also known as PACT, a very well-known group which you're all familiar with. As you know, the CMC depends upon the support of numerous sponsors to help create such a great conference, and we're really grateful to PACT for their support this year. So I work for 9 Story Media Group, which is also part of the Scholastic family, and I'm going to introduce our esteemed panel here. I'm going to start with Ivan Ajenjo from Peekaboo Animation in Barcelona, and next to him is Andrew Kavanagh from Cavalier Productions in Ireland, Dublin, Ireland, and then Sarah Muller from BBC Children's, whose title I'm actually going to read out. Because the BBC does do this, I don't know why, Senior Head of Commissioning 7+ at BBC Children's, just so that everybody knows. And then, very snappy. And last but not least, we've got Roger Shakes from Mediatek Productions, New Zealand. So we are going to talk a little bit about co-productions. We're going to have a general overview. We're going to have a couple of case studies. And at the end, we're going to have 10 minutes for questions. Sarah, we'd like to kick off with you, if possible, talking a little bit about the co-pro model. Obviously, BBC doesn't only do co-pro models, but we'd love to hear how you work in that scenario, how you evaluate projects, and what the process is a little bit, please.
Okay, so I think one of the things to preface with is that it's a fast-moving environment, and I think that even a panel we would have given last year might have some different advice this year. So it's a live space, and I think the key takeaway is it keeps changing, so keep thinking. Don't think there's only one way to do this. There's lots of opportunities. So as from the broadcaster perspective, it's very important. And it's very important for some obvious reasons and for some less obvious reasons. Financially, for sure, it helps all of our money go further and helps us do more, to bring more aspiration and more ambition to an audience that's increasingly sophisticated and with a world of choice. So it allows us all to compete more positively and more successfully. But it also gives us an opportunity to tell different types of stories with different partners where we can share knowledge and bring different skills in and hold slightly different lenses up to the world. And also, for us certainly at the BBC, but I think for some of our public service colleagues across the world, it also allows us to spread our budgets thinner so we can make more UK-centric content as well. So a Dumping Ground or a Jamie Johnson or a My Life, which doesn't have any international partners, we can secure the future for those kind of brands and for you as an industry by making sure we're working very hard in the international co-production space. Of specific interest at the moment, I think, is working with public service broadcasters across Europe. That's very successful for us. We can demonstrate really positive models on animation with Super Happy Magic Forest, which is a Banerjee animation from a Matty Long book. It's just won a Broadcast Digital Award for Best Children's Show this week, but that's an Italian, UK, German co-pro, and it's been very harmonious, and we've worked well together on that. Also Lady Grace Mysteries, which is just wrapped, which is a UK, Belgium, France co-production, which is allowing us to tell a story about, we've never told before, about the court of Queen Elizabeth I for our audience in a very anachronistic, modern and refreshing way, so that's allowed us to do that. But not every project is suitable for co-production. That's not what the ask is here. We will work with you to establish whether or not something has international legs and whether the storytelling is sufficiently interesting and able to talk to audiences around the world and their different needs. So that's something we can always advise on. So hopefully you will bring your show to the BBC, your project, your baby, and we'll talk it through and we'll decide it's something that we're interested in. And I think you're all probably familiar with the review and selection process. It is something we introduced a few years back, and that's really good because you pitch to all the stakeholders all at once, everything everywhere all at once, and you then have buy-in. And then at that stage, the process moves over to CRBA and you get the official paperwork you need to be able to start going out and really talking about a co-pro in earnest with other partners around the world. And again, might work with you. You get your executive producer allocated at the BBC, potentially a script editor, which I'll probably come back to later. And we can all work together to look at where the potential areas are. And you know what? It's this process. We can start with lots of ideas, and then we can narrow them down to what the perfect one or the best fit is for your individual projects. Or indeed, we can look at projects that have come in from Spain or from Ireland, from New Zealand. We can come in a different way around. People can bring content to us that they believe would work for the BBC, but that has already been commissioned in a different territory. So there are so many conversations we can have. It's also, and I need to make this clear, not just public service broadcasters. We will and have worked with or talked about working with really anybody, streamers. However we think a project will work best, then we're willing to look at that. And I think, although it's difficult for us internally, we understand that has to be on a project-by-project basis. So you bring your show to us, it's not cookie cutter. We'll work out exactly what the best way to make it that's most amicable. I think that's enough of me for the minute.
That's really lovely.
Is that what you
Yeah,
want?
no, that's really good. Thank you. And I think also there was a session last year which really went into on a granular level about various co-production treaties and so on. And I think we all know that you can go co-productions down the treaty route, but actually a lot of us do co-productions which are not official treaties, and we're touching on all of those. Just a quick straw poll: how many, for the three producers, what percentage of shows that you're producing or developing are co-productions, would you say?
I would say 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
And how about Cavalier?
80%.
Yeah. And how about...
Certainly in New Zealand, we're only looking at 100%.
Yeah, I mean, that just tells you so much about the state of the market right now. I think that's really interesting. I'd love to talk a little bit, Ivan, if you could just tell us, the starting point is, where do you start networking with potential co-production partners? How do you kick that off? What events do you go to? Maybe let's just touch on that really quickly, if possible.
Okay, so, finding your co-producer is like dating, so you need to go, you need to go, first of all, outside home. That's the first thing, because nobody will come home. And then you need to go to you need to have a strategy, and you need to go to the places where the people that you need is there. So, first of all, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a studio? Are you looking for a producer? Are you looking for a broadcaster? So you need to know exactly what the need for your specific project. And then once you have this clear, then you can go to find these people. Like here in Annecy, in Cartoon Forum, I'm usually going there, MIPCOM, Kids Screen. So I keep traveling all year round, like 5, 6 fixed trips. And that's the way that you network with people, and then you start getting information on these kind of producers. Like, are they good producers? Are they not so good? Somebody knows about them. And then you start doing your market research before you start actually working with these guys.
Yeah, well, great advice. Okay, so that takes time, doesn't it? It takes time to find the right partners and to make sure you're in a good place with them. And there are so many positives to be had, aren't there, Andrew? So many positives to be had out of a co-production. And maybe could you talk a little bit about what you see those as?
Yeah, I mean, it's it depends where you are on your development curve. If you're a startup or if you're a well-established studio, you have different requirements from a co-producer. And we're quite a long time in business now, so we tend to get seen as the more experienced hand, even though we might be the minority co-producer, being in Ireland and not raising quite as much money as we could get out of a European territory, for example. So I think you've got to, if you're starting out, you're looking for safe pair of hands to work with. You're looking for somebody who's done it before, at least one co-production before. And, preferably with the territory that you're in. So a little bit of research, as Ivan said, but very important that it is like a marriage. You have to be able to, and this is the thing, you can meet people on Teams or Zoom or whatever, but if you actually come to a market and the interpersonal thing is strong, and you develop that relationship over several years, and you know you can work with that person because it's a long haul, it's stressful, you know, and you need to do a little bit of, but it is an incredibly positive experience, and you learn so much from doing co-production.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, the amount of information that you get, and it's different for each territory, but like it's the only way really of kind of garnering that, because there's no school teaches that, you know. You got to get out in the world and do it.
Yeah, and I mean, also from a creative perspective, Sarah, how do you, what are the positives that come through the creative process in a co-production?
Different viewpoints, for sure, different cultural viewpoints, but I'm just going to sidebar here, then I'm probably taking Alex off her agenda. It's very important to get all those identified and established up front. This is, you know, not everything's amazing. There are bits you have to really think about, and those are lining up your editorial and creative expectations, and that's everything from who you think your target audience is, because I think we've all had experiences of getting quite a way into production and discovering that someone thinks they've got a family audience, but someone else thinks it's 7 to 9, and some other people think it's 8 to 12. So absolutely, through the producers, being really clear about what we're all expecting to get and making sure that's captured somewhere. It is an inescapable truth that sometimes it's a good idea to discover or decide up front who's got the last word, whose position is the most important within the mix, potentially who's investing the most, or who is the home broadcaster, just so that if it does for some reason break down, it's like a prenup really. Hopefully nothing will ever go wrong. We're running with our dating metaphor, aren't we? Hopefully nothing will go wrong and it will all be harmonious and delightful. But if it isn't, you've planned and you have a structure in place so it doesn't get really ugly and cause any problems for the production process later. I'm also going to talk a little bit now about managing notes, because if you've got 4 plus different voices with their own agenda at the table, everyone will have different notes. And you really need, and I come across this a lot, and it's something I always insist on, or a variation thereof. If you've got a lot of different notes, someone has to be responsible at the production end for managing those notes, working through them with the showrunner or the lead writer, and working out which are in conflict, where people are actually saying the same thing, but it doesn't seem obvious, and just working out which can be executed and which can't, in which case you can then go back and have a proper, meaningful, informed conversation, because nobody minds that, and if necessary, we can all jump on a call. We've all done that with all the broadcast partners there to work out how we will get over it in a way that suits everybody. But you can only do it if you've got that person who is a confident executor of notes to take charge of it for the whole group, which is why it has to sit at this end. And I'm really sorry it has to go in the budget. People get costs.
Yeah, no, I mean, and honestly, it's an art form, and it is the glue. So I think it's an incredibly important point. And actually, a nice segue, really, for us to talk about Roger. Roger is going to talk through an international case study, being a New Zealand studio, really interesting case study for a show called Bad Jelly. And you're going to talk to us a little bit about how that's worked.
Yeah.
Roger, I'll just hand it over to you. But first, we're going to show a little clip of Bad Jelly.
Once upon a time, there was a little boy and girl, and their names were Tim and Rose.
We have to get to Bad Jelly's castle to rescue our friend Lucy.
I need those children, Dalboot.
I need them boiling in a pot.
I need their screams to fill the air as my powers restore.
Oh, and I need some bread.
Soup's nothing without a little bread on the side.
Can all of you be quiet?
Now, I have to go and find these kids so that Bad Jelly will love me. All the best.
If you've come for my trousers, you're in for a rude awakening.
I am a police officer, Tree.
Prepare to feel the long wind of my wings.
Captain Mudwiggle, at your service.
My name is Binklebonk.
This is awesome.
Waterfall ahead!
Oh, I knew I should have gone home.
Here we come, Lucy.
Oh, Dalboot.
Thank you. So just to give you some background, although my accent is British and I'm
grew up in Bethnal Green. I've been living in New Zealand now for 20 years. So it's lovely to come back and be in Sheffield. Just to quickly run through, Bad Jelly is a story that was written by Spike Milligan. And in New Zealand, Bad Jelly is one of those iconic stories that when I arrived in New Zealand, I had no clue that this was as popular as it was. But it's one of those stories that has resonated within the culture of New Zealand. And it was a perfect opportunity for us to then bring that together as a co-production, obviously with the UK in mind as well. And what we tried to do is to incorporate elements within that production where everyone had strengths. So in this case, you'll see some of the cast there. A lot of them are from the UK because it's a UK story. And when we approached some of the talent, they all knew about Spike. They all wanted to be involved in a production that involved some of Spike's work. So it was easy to bring them on board. Just to give you a flavour of what a co-production looked like, this was the first New Zealand tripartite co-production. And on the screen, you'll see a whole bunch of credits and people that have been involved. And although it might sound like an award system where you go, I'd like to thank these people and these people, no co-production can happen on its own. And so there are co-production partners, in this case, Cantilever Media in the UK, Smear Animation in Canada, and we had to work together with our funding agencies, obviously Global Screen Fund and the BFI in the UK, and in New Zealand it was the Film Commission and New Zealand On Air. So lots of people involved at different touch points, all wanting to help bring this thing to life. And then the final component is having a distribution partner like Wildbrain, who then helped to take it global. And you can see that there is 117 pages of just the inter-party agreement. And if you think about what's involved in that, every bit that we're talking about has to be decided, confirmed, and agreed. So you need a lot of alignment. One of the key things I always talk about when I talk about co-production is this ability to trust your partners and trust that they have their intent and work together to be aligned on all things. So for us in New Zealand, we have to travel. We have to go out to the world and find those partners. And what you look for are relationships that allow you to get through all of these transactional documents in a way that reduces conflict, reduces friction, and enables the project to go forward. And as a producer, it's my responsibility to make sure that all those parties understand their role and they contribute in the way that's both creative and financial to get the end result, which we've obviously delivered with Bad Jelly. And if you're interested in Bad Jelly, it will be on screens with ITV later in the year, so look out for it. The final thing is how the work split operated. So in New Zealand, we had 70% of the budget coming from New Zealand, 10 from the UK, and that's a really important component for this tripartite production. In that, because we had some contribution from the UK, it qualified as European content, which is an important selling point for us when we're doing our global mapping. The other thing just to bear in mind is the work split. When you're doing a co-production treaty, there are certain rules that you have to adhere to, and getting that right is a bit of a puzzle, and you have to put that puzzle together with your partner, and then you have to work with the time zones. So obviously in New Zealand, we're at the other end of the world, so we're used to getting up in the middle of the night or staying late to accommodate what our partners have to do. So if you're thinking about these things in terms of co-production experiences, you just have to think slightly broader than your normal 9 to 5, and you have to be more dynamic and fluid in your ability to navigate some of the both legal and creative challenges. I hope that's useful.
Thanks, Roger. It's such an interesting case study, and I love the idea of doing a co-production with New Zealand, so thank you so much for that. We're going to go straight into another example of a co-production, this time with Cavalier, Andrew, and talk a little bit about... sorry. I will just say we're going to show the clip first.
Go ahead.
We're going to show the clip first, and then you can talk about your co-production for Bobby and the Bottle Brigade. So.
Adventure today in the ocean, having so much fun, helping his friends on the way. We will see, we will meet, and rescue all the different
Very nice.
Yeah, so I'm one half of Cavalier, and I don't get into the Roger side of things, the very complex aspect of it. My side of the business tends to be on the IP development, which is usually me building a department around a particular concept. As this show went to Cartoon Forum last year with our co-producers, we launch it, and we usually do that kind of as a solo act. So the departure for Cavalier over the last few years was to think of development or co-development as a route to co-production, at the beginning, rather than trying to find a co-producer later on, which is what we traditionally do. So we are still doing that, but we're also looking at projects that we can bring into our stable of IP that we are kind of designing with the co-production path in mind. So we talked a little bit about the types of partners you want to work with. Cavalier have a long history of working with French co-productions. So we have worked at Watch Next Media on 3 seasons of Boy Girl Cat Mouse Cheese. We're about to start another show with them. And yeah, we had that path through, and we kind of locked down that model. So we were looking to kind of leverage that as well. The other thing we were doing was we were looking for projects that originated outside of Cavalier that were kind of, aesthetically and kind of on a values level were aligned with what we were trying to do with our own IP. So this project came to us through something big, through Frederic Puech and Christelle Ponce a year and a half ago. And they kind of singled us out for it. So we were like, okay, yeah, we get this. It's something that we like to do. It's preschool. It's got like good representation going on. It was very comedic. We just really liked the kind of crazy cast of characters. It's a kind of a Paw Patrol meets SpongeBob was their elevator pitch. So we were like, that's a challenge we want to get involved in. So the track record there was that we had very experienced producer out of France in Frederic, and Christelle, who was formerly Canal Plus. She was a broadcaster. There was distribution, there was commissioning experience, and we were bringing the development experience. It was something that they hadn't really done too much of. So it was good complementary sort of in terms of we're all producers, but we're all doing different types of an approach, but with a common objective in mind. So the alignment was really important, but like having that sort of that experience locked in at the beginning. So it wasn't just all about the kind of the idea, which is beautiful and the animation's lovely and I really like the concept, but it was also, we knew that there was that everybody involved at the development stage had the experience to shepherd that through. So, I mean, really, this is new for us to do it this way, but I'm enjoying it. I'm still doing the kind of, the other side where I just, hitch myself to a star and let it go, but like having this kind of more strategic approach as well, it's a lovely new model for us to work with, and it's something that now I'm starting to go out and try and do myself, my own IP. And would have been a nervous thing for me to do before because I maybe didn't know the people well enough, or maybe they had complementary skills to what Cavalier were doing, but not an experience of doing co-production. So this is sort of it's covering a lot of bases for us, and new approach for us. But we're hoping that this one will have a smoother path through. Who knows?
That's fantastic, and I love how you talked about finding those synergies. It's actually very difficult, often in a co-production scenario, especially if you've got 3 or more partners, to figure out the work split and to make sure it's complementary and everybody's actually happy with the bit that they're doing, and you're not doubling up. It's difficult you have to spend a lot of time up front agreeing that, and when you get synergies like that, it's fantastic. And Ivan, maybe you can tell us a bit about the synergies for your case study, which is a really good European case study, I think, for a very well-known brand that everyone in the room is going to recognize, the Triplets. Perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit about that experience, please.
Yes. Well, there's no clip because we are not in production yet, so there's no teaser. But basically, this is a Spanish brand that was famous like 30 years ago. I guess people in the room might recognize it. And we're doing this reboot. And that's a 3-country co-production, Spain, Italy, and Portugal. And the way we decided on which country to co-produce with was by looking at where the previous classic brand series was broadcasted and where it was successful and where it was not. And so that's how we discriminated. And then we had a bunch of countries, which Italy, Portugal, France, Brazil. These were the kind of the 4 or 5 target countries. And then we started scouting who is the right partner. And at the end of the day, it was Italy and Portugal as 2 minority partners. And through Rainfrog in Italy and Sardinia and Lata in Portugal. These are our 2 partners. And then talking about the work split, that was interesting because at the very beginning, as Rainfrog in Italy, they are a post-production studio, so that was clear that they would be doing sound design, post-production, and so on. And we were thinking on moving animation there because they belong to a bigger group where there is an animation studio. And we didn't have, or we don't have, an in-house animation studio. And that was the first idea, but then we realized that doing animation in Italy was pretty much expensive, and it didn't compensate to move the animation there because then the budget was going really high. So we decided to go the other way around and then keep the animation in Spain and Portugal, even if this was not the original idea, and then moving some other parts of the production in Italy, which were not so expensive in comparison to the Spanish cost, which is basically storyboarding and VG layouts. So we need to be open-minded also in how to organize, because maybe that's not the first idea that you have, but that's the way that you need to go so that the budget and the work split match. And here you can see the financing structure. So as you can see, this is really a puzzle. So we have 4 public broadcasters on board, 2 in Spain, the Spanish and the Catalan ones. We have RAI in Italy and RTP in Portugal, plus the public funding in Spain and Portugal, plus the tax credits in Spain and Italy, plus Creative Europe media that we are still asking for. So the Creative Europe and the Portuguese fund, the ICA, they are not confirmed yet, so we are still in the process. But we are launching production anyway because we need to match the delivery deadlines, which is also something that you need to take into account. You may have different financiers and different public fundings, and all of them go through different speeds. And then you might have different delivery deadlines, and you need to match them all. And you also need to go with the rules of all the countries. So one thing that is also important here for this co-production is the start of animation, the start of shooting. Because we need to make an official co-production here in order to be eligible for the tax credits. So we need to go through the process of the approval of international co-production as if we were doing a feature film. And it happens that the definition of the start of shooting is different in Spain than in Italy. So in Spain, we understand the start of shooting in animation when we start the actual animation. But in Italy, this is the start of storyboarding, because that's already movement. So we need to take this into account so that we make the declaration before the Italian guys start doing the shooting. So it's like a mess, but you need to have this into account, and you need to know the regulation of all the countries, because otherwise it can affect your financing, and you can get a non-eligibility for tax credits. So yeah, that's the puzzle.
Yeah, thank you. You know, and I think it's worth noting, because this came up in the question time session this morning, that what you see there it's an amazing example. It's a lot of work, but you know, there's 4 broadcasters. They're all public broadcasters.
Yes.
So it really speaks to the extent to which public broadcasters in Europe and around the world, you had TVNZ in yours, are massively supporting this kind of business model and how it really can work. So you've got your tax credits, your public broadcasters, and you've got your soft funding, your soft money. And, you know, thank goodness for all these funds and these tax credits that we have in this part of the world.
And answering to your request before, so we are also establishing the rules on the broadcasters, so who is saying what and who is the leading one. So the Catalan broadcaster is the one leading because it's an original Catalan property from the very beginning. So they are the one leading the scripting side, and then the other broadcasters come on board later on, after we have already applied those comments, and then we can move forward. So there are these rules that you need to establish, actually, to make it work.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Sorry,
please.
Alex.
Please.
Because this is a thing of beauty, but it's also quite daunting, particularly for people that are just starting out. You do this yourself, I know. You do this yourself, and you've done yours, and they're very impressive. What do you do if you don't have these skills? Are there people that you can go to? I mean, because broadcast can only help up to a certain point. How do you put one of these together? Sorry to throw everybody.
I mean, I think it's a little bit what Andrew was saying earlier, isn't it, Andrew? That you find the partners that can complement what you're doing and you don't go it alone. And actually that brings us, thank you very much, very nicely into our next bit, which is now, we use the word catastrophe very lightly, take it with a pinch of salt. However, a co-production can go horribly, horribly wrong as well, just like a marriage can.
Yes.
And so, it's important to talk about it because the due diligence that you need to know before you go into a marriage or co-production, buy a house, anything like that, you have to really do it with this as well. Andrew, I thought maybe you could give us the pitfalls to avoid maybe, and perhaps you have an example or anything you'd like to share. Let's just keep it real because it isn't always easy.
No, I mean, we've had, the backbone of our business over like 20 years has been co-production. And I think, when you're coming to markets first and you're meeting with producers and it's kind of like, it's chummy and you think, yeah, really like these guys. They did a great show. We did a show they liked. And then we think we can just do another one together, And like we have had that experience where sort of, the warning signs were there and we kind of went, it'll be fine, it'll be okay. We're all in the same boat together. But I think when, I'm not going to mention names or projects or anything like that, but like, it's, if somebody pulls out the wrong Jenga block, the whole thing comes down. And if you're, entangled with a production where, your business is very much staked on it, and you put a lot of time and energy into it, it can be devastating for all parties, not just the ones that are kind of going south. It can bring down a variety of studios, if it's a bipartite or tripartite agreement. So you do have to, the due diligence we mentioned earlier, that's absolutely vital. And I think, as particularly in the current climate, where we're hearing a lot of horror stories about companies and having financial difficulties and so on, you really need to be a lot more kind of circumspect. And you might know somebody for 20 years, but you still have to kind of kick the tires again. Take nothing for granted, and really, we're all trying to kind of create a dream here and make something happen, but there are practicalities that you need to consider as well. So it's just, it's common sense, but like. We tend to forget sometimes.
It's hard to imagine the things that could go wrong, isn't it, Roger? Because when you think about, your contracts have to be absolutely watertight. You've got to have a good lawyer. You've got to be what? Because if you, let's say one of your partners is doing all the animation work and that studio goes bust, not for any fault of their own. And so you are, it's a €7 million production. You are 2 million in the red. You've got a problem that the broadcaster can't help you with. They can't come in and pay that overage. They can't help you find another studio. So you have to protect your company and your own interests. Is that something that you have to think about a lot too?
Yeah, I think for anyone going into a co-production relationship, the due diligence is part of that. But you also have to have a sense of forward thinking and always have plan B and plan C. Not every scenario is going to work out the way you want it to. And I think over time, just like when you're learning in the industry, your experience gives you a sense of confidence about the people you're talking to and working with. There are some curly things that happen. You can be in a situation where, for example, you're getting different people turning up to meetings. That's kind of a red flag for us because it means there's turnover on their side. What's happening? Who am I really talking to? Who's making the decisions? So you can find out a lot of things quite early, particularly in-person meetings. So it's really important that you actually take the time, where possible, to go to their studio, sit with them, have coffee with them, meet their family. Because once you get that level of connection, it's easier to understand what their level of commitment is, but also it builds the degree of trust so that when things do go wrong, there is a pathway because of the relationship in order to solve it.
Yeah. And if you've got a bad feeling in your tummy...
Yeah, follow it.
Yeah.
You're probably right about that. So we're not going to dwell on this. The reason we have this slide is to let you know that at the end, our amazing executive producers and producers have put together a QR code which talks about soft money, funding, tax credits. It's not about co-production treaties, but we are going to have that a little bit at the end. And I also just wanted to flag that we have Elaine from the BFI in the room and is available to maybe talk to people afterwards with more information about the kind of soft funding available in the UK. I don't know if you could stand up, Elaine, so that people can identify you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, just in case anyone wants to know a bit more about that. So we're just going to take it into the more positive space about just the optimistic takeaways, the great takeaways about working in new formats as well, and really adapting to, everything from digital first and YouTube and all of those. All of those platforms also lend themselves to a degree to co-production. So, Ivan, I might kick off with you. Can you give us just a couple of words on what you find innovative and interesting about going down the co-production route at this time?
I mean, co-production is the way to open to new opportunities that you maybe don't have in your own country and you may find in some other places. Like, for instance, in our case, working with streamers or with these kind of online platforms is not so common because they don't work directly in Spain. So if we go through a partner in any other country, especially an Anglo-Saxon speaking country, then it's easier for us to get there. And then it opens to opportunities that we might not be able to, and we would still be linked to the traditional way of financing through our public broadcasters, which is basically the bed and breakfast of our business. So I'm not so into new models of business because of that, so because I need to go through some other partners, but co-production allows us to do so.
How about you, Andrew?
Well, I mean, it's, I think what was old is now new, in many ways. So I think the trajectory was all focused on LA for a long time. And, I can only speak for Ireland, really. When we started out as an industry, like there's something like 40 studios in Ireland now at the moment. When I started out, there were 5. And we were very reliant on co-production. It was the only route. You couldn't finance a show entirely out of Ireland. And I think what's happened is, in the interim, there's been a bit of a flip because the industry has grown in Ireland, and in territories that we used to co-produce with, it's maybe reduced. And we've become sort of so hardwired into co-production anyway that people do tend to look at the Irish studios, even though we're maybe not the majority co-producer on paper, the number beside us, in terms of experience and in terms of having done co-productions with many different territories, put together deals in the way Roger and Ivan have done. We've been doing that since day one, and very few Irish studios had the sort of the golden ticket with the with the streamers just getting work all the time. So there is that going on. So I think in many ways. This is what we started out with, and now it's the reality for us all again. And I'm kind of excited about it because we're co-producing with territories we have never done work with before. We're talking to a Norwegian studio at the moment. We're back, hopefully, co-producing with Canada again after a long pause. And it's just it's nice. It's a way of kind of looking at what we've done in terms of our experience over the last 15, 20 years, and then applying it to new scenarios and looking for new opportunities, new creative opportunities, and new business opportunities.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, Sarah, and also you mentioned co-producing with streamers, and that's something that is less common, I would say, for most producers. But from a broadcaster perspective, can you talk a bit about that? That's really interesting.
Absolutely. I always have to add a bit in. I've worked out what I want to say. Anyway.
Absolutely.
And I do feel that there's a real optimism and positivity and will that was less obvious last year, that people are really willing to consider different ways of working. And that's at very least the first step on the road of this particular journey. It's the ability to open yourself up and think about new ways of working. I also want to say that we are, by default, sitting on a panel of people that all have animated projects, because animation lends itself so well to working internationally with different languages and different cultures. But it is very much something that works, certainly for live action drama at the higher end when we're looking at really huge budgets, because those are the kind of stories that are kind of at a Harry Potter level that we know work for every audience everywhere in the world. So, don't discount live action, it is there. And those are the things specifically that maybe we talk to the streamers about. Now, here's what I've noticed is the difference. Even a year and a half ago, a lot of streamers didn't consider co-production as a model at all, because they had their wretched, ruin the industry 125% funding model, just spoil everything for everybody, including themselves.
Streamers in the room.
When it didn't work. And now making tentative steps back to the table, and conversations are starting to have about what would that look like, what would that content be, because they know they need a number of things, and including and feeding into this crucial area that I spend my entire life thinking about, which is the discoverability. You can make the best show in the world, but if the audience can't find it and doesn't know it's there, then you might as well potentially not have bothered. So we need to concentrate on that. And there is a definite potential harmony and how we can window and work together to reach different bits of the audience at different times and push them back together. It's really turning the whole equation. You wouldn't have thought about those things until the very end. Now we need to think about them right at the beginning. But there is definitely nascent conversations about how that will work. And it is about the money. It's always about the money a bit in this kind of thing, or we probably wouldn't do it. But it is particularly about, as I say, discoverability, working out how to get to different bits of the world and build a brand that you can then give this long tail to that we all talk about, and work into the other areas around experiential and how you really make something come alive with an audience. And it's definitely the future. So don't rule anything out.
Can I just add to that? Because I think one of the things that we do, because we have to, from New Zealand, we're obviously working with Australia, and we look at Southeast Asia. We're now looking at India. We're opening an office in Uruguay so that we can tap into the Latin American market. The world is a big place. You don't have to partner with the regular people. So Canada, for example, they're one of the best co-production partners, I think, globally. They know how to do this stuff. They've got lots of funding avenues. They've got great experience as well. So that's an easy in for those people who are doing it new. But I always think that you should be looking to create new ground. Go to Nigeria and see if you can do a co-production there. Go to Malaysia and see if you can do something there. Because what you're doing is opening up the reach of your audience and then bringing in new models, which will then inspire other producers to do things differently as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much to be said for working. We haven't. I'm so glad you talked about that, because we haven't really touched on how to co-produce in Southeast Asia, Latin America, which is less common. But there are a lot of companies who are in partnership with studios in Europe and the US and North America. And so it's a brilliant thing to be exploring that. And again, to your initial point, Ivan, to be meeting with them at these international conferences, it really is the only place. I mean, I think, Justine, you said you're going to Colombia shortly. You're going to be going to a festival there. I mean, you know, I have a colleague that went to an amazing festival which was covering all genres in Rio recently, and she met with two incredibly interesting writers who we're going to hopefully maybe work with one day. So really spreading that reach out is very important.
And one other thing, sorry, just to throw one other thing. I was at Cannes Film Festival in May, and one of the rumours, and I say it's a rumour, is that America may well have a federal incentive, which means that they are going to start doing co-productions. Well, they need to be with people who know how to do it as well. So there are opportunities that may come and may be at your doorstep, but you need to start thinking about them now.
True, because it's not a model that has been so current. Yes,
adding to this, like opportunities for new co-productions, like unexpected co-production. There is a workshop that the European Union is organizing in Osaka in late September for co-productions between Europe and Japan for animation. So this it's a, let's say, theoretical workshop of talking about IPs and co-production and blah, and there will be a B2B part session too. So. And this is an initiative from the European Union itself, so sometimes you can take profit of these opportunities that are there, and someone is organizing that, and you can even jump on that and then find unexpected partners.
So maybe a suggestion is go to one unexpected place that you haven't been to, because we all talk about this circuit that we all do, but you are going to keep seeing the same people who are used to working in the same way, and both of you two have articulated this so well. Look for the new ways of working, look for the new partners. Don't mess it up for the rest of us. But so just think, what are the more niche? I mean, we do a lot of factual. There's some really great factual conferences that aren't automatically on the children's radar. And you can't guarantee which filmmakers you'll meet working in which genres. And all conversations could spark something really rewarding later on.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a trend for a lot of studios in Southeast Asia and Latin America and India, for instance, who have traditionally worked as service. They've done service work for all of us and all the studios and all the streamers and done amazing work. And many, many of them are now getting into creating their own IP, but they also realize that they haven't worked from that perspective and they need partners who really do have that experience and they have great ideas. So that is definitely a really strong opportunity. Is there anything else? You said something really lovely, Roger, about, I just would like to kind of end on that, about why, working in this beautiful bubble of kids' content.
So, for those people who are in the media that work in other genres, I have to say from my experience, and I think it's an experience that a lot of us share, when you work in children's, and you work in animation in particular within the children's environment, they are the best people. We're not competing with another. We generally collaborate. We generally share information. We don't expect things to happen quickly. Therefore, we are naturally supportive of each other. And that's one of the things that separates, I think, even at CMC, we're here as a collegiate group of people trying to help move forward collectively. And that spirit, I think, is something that certainly attracts us and keeps us wanting to do more projects in this environment. But I think we do it because we don't think we're going to be the next Peppa Pig. We want to be. But realistically, we do it because we love our content, we love communicating it, and we all have that experience of being a child or being a parent. And so that is why we want to contribute. And ultimately, we work together collectively to do that. And I think that's one of the great things.
That's beautiful. That's really lovely. I think we would all agree with that. I'm just going to bring up the QR code for anyone that'd like to take a picture of that, which has been put together by Justine Bannister, and is really just great in terms of tips on tax credits, on some of the funding opportunities, making connections and so on. So you'll find a lovely bit of information in there which you can take away. We're going to open up the floor to questions then, if anybody's got some questions for this amazing panel. We've got one right here.
My name is Anthony Pickthall. I'm a screenwriter. I'm interested in how you handle the IP. Where do you prefer it to sit? Because my instinct, if I'm a screenwriter adapting something, I want to know that I've got the rights to do it. So I might negotiate on my own, but is that problematic for you?
You mean in terms of ownership, IP ownership and the underlying rights?
Yeah, because, for example, I also write novels, so I could adapt my own.
Yeah. Sarah, I think I'm going to have you address that. What do you think?
Okay, I was going to mention rights earlier because I think it's worth really looking at the wording on our catastrophe slide of making sure you can get those rights out because I think we've all got experiences of a partner company going under and then the rights being taken up by them and going into a liquidation process which you can't get out from under. So I think really looking at how you can revert and what are circumstances for all parties is worth doing. So we're quite robust on this. We can't take anything forward unless we know the rights have been properly secured, and it's something our RBA would look at the agreements to make sure that everything's been properly secured. I think it's probably right in saying that we would all put a vehicle company together for a specific production and make sure all the suite of rights that you need go into that and all the key agreements, again, to protect the parent companies from exposure to risk later on. I think it's something that all your broadcast partners will ask for or advise that you do, and potentially all your screen funding agencies as well. Does that answer your question? Sort of. Give me a bit more context.
I can add a little bit to that.
Roger's really good. Ask Roger. What Roger says.
So, look, one of the things that I think doesn't get said, probably, in the co-production world is who gets all the money.
If there is any. Caveat
exactly. So, you know, when someone creates a bit of IP, there's an expectation that, you know, because they own it, they're going to get a bigger share of the pie. That's not quite true. It goes into a pot, and whoever brings in money, as part of their contribution, they take a bit of that equity. So you might start off with 100%, but you may end up as a screenwriter with 10%. If you want the 100%, you have to become a production company and do it yourself. The challenge...
You won't get 100%.
Yeah, no. The challenge is to, as producers, we have to help you manage that expectation, because we all want to be successful, but we can't all be millionaires if we're all taking 100%. And so there is this, again, it's about the relationship, the trust, and understanding what you can actually achieve at the end of something, when something is in the world, and how it gets split. And those negotiations happen right at the beginning. And sometimes, if you're inexperienced, you can get shafted because you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And we've all been through that, but that's how you learn. And so to some degree, you might have to give away something in order to learn that the next time you do something, you're slightly more informed.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember also that, you know, for any partner that has a back-end position, so an equity stake of sorts, whatever that percentage may be, the reality is that for the great majority of shows, it may take many, 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 many years to see any of that money coming through. And you've got your investors recouping in the first position and you're in sixth position. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't materialize, but what you've got is an asset. You've got a calling card, you've got a credit, you have made something, you've been part of the creative or something. So and it does have a value that you don't want to be sitting around waiting for that money to come through for you.
And you should probably look at the recoupment position as well, because I think a story from New Zealand is that on the original Lord of the Rings films, the Tolkien estate didn't really check what the recoupment position was. And we might not even be there yet, because somehow people were recouping the cost of their houses and cars, and there was all sorts of things that should never have been there. So the actual people that should have been most rewarded for this great work, that's true, isn't it? I've not invented that.
But there's elements of that across the whole industry. You know, we're all naive when we start. I mean, I'm still learning. You know, I'm literally still learning about how you can protect the IP while growing a brand and what that looks like. And over time, you just pick up more and more tips, you talk to more and more people, and you begin to finesse what your agreement might look like. Not just to benefit you, but to benefit the project. That's the key thing.
Thank you. Have we got any other questions in the room? Trying to see if there's anyone. Oh, there's one. There's one there, and then afterwards there's one to the left. So this one is first, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I work at Penguin and the publishers. What, I guess, maybe for Sarah at the BBC, but what makes a co-production project British enough for you to consider at the BBC, and then maybe any other equivalent learnings from the different territories we've got on the panel?
Okay. So there are some inherent areas, I would say things like magic, classic books, slightly different approach, but classic books, and things that really reflect. So for instance, a Dodger, which was a semi-co-production that we made a couple of years ago, spinning off the character, much-loved character from Dickens. So it's about recognising a part of life here, of modern contemporary life in the UK. That's the Britishness. But again, there are still stories that our audience would love to see, and the BBC needs to tell in a specific way that was very different to how, say, a Netflix would tell a story. Sorry, anybody from Netflix, but we are very hot on editorial policy and safeguarding and how we approach a complicated story, like, for instance, a Dodger, where there's poverty, where there's having to commit illegal acts just to survive and what those pressures look like. those are stories we put a lot of effort into making sure are told from the sensibilities of our public service audience. So that's where the difference lies. We can actually do things that feel a bit more international and generic, but which have a really interesting story that we think will interest our audience, but then making sure we bring our values to that. I think ultimately it's values that we're looking at here.
Thank you. I think we had another question somewhere over there.
Hi there, my name's Katie. I lead a double life. So I'm here as a creator, but in my real life I work in advertising as a creative director. And we've got an idea on the table and my agency are quite interested in getting involved. I just wondered if you'd ever worked with like an advertising agency as part of the co-pro thing? Because obviously like we do animation, but we do it with very different budgets in a very different way.
Oh, yes.
So I'm like, are you a silent partner? Like, I just wondered if you had any insight into that, because I foresee it being complicated.
Is that me again? Then?
Yeah, I think whoever would like to speak to that.
I can add a bit at the end.
I don't know if I understood properly the question, basically. So you mean the advertising agency being the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, usually on these slices, the people appearing there, they are people, let's say, contributing somehow to the financing. So if the advertising company is the one actually producing the show, yes, I mean...
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, can we have her
Yeah, two things on that. If they're putting money into the production, that's great, wonderful, because it helps you with your finance plan. But I would encourage you to make sure that you get some in-kind support on the advertising and the marketing and the branding, because that's an area where, as producers, we are having to now learn. We have to become ambassadors for our work through advertising and marketing. And it's great that you've got to have access to some skills in that area, because producers are having to do that for themselves.
So I probably need to add just a tiny caveat. So it would have to be looked at fairly carefully, because sources of finance are a matter of editorial policy and are to do with our charter. One of the things would absolutely be it not being tied to an existing commercial property. It would have to be new IP. If it goes on to be successful commercially after that, that is probably fine. So I think you need to have some conversations. It's not a no, but it's not an automatically obvious route. But I think it's one of the new ways that Roger is talking about, and we'd all be mad not to explore it. Yeah. And if it's not the BBC because of editorial strictures, then the other broadcasters are available that might be able to work in a different and more commercial way. Or it might be the dreaded YouTube, it might be anything.
Yeah, I mean, there are similar agreements going on, for instance, in Spain with toy makers. So you have the production company doing the animation show, and the toy maker is an investor in that, and then they have the rights of doing the toys out of the characters of the series. So it's kind of similar agreement, I guess, what you are talking about. Yeah. Possible.
And I just say that the one little flag would be that if they want to be investors and they want to be partners and they want to bring something to the table, that's fantastic. But because budgets for commercials, animated commercials, are so completely removed from TV series, and the whole process in the pipeline is really quite different if they haven't done any long form, that you need to make sure that they aren't necessarily the deciding factor in the mix. Because you do want to be working with a production company who has the experience of producing long form series. And, you know, it would be, you don't want them to cut their teeth on your show necessarily in that way and have that level of control. Okay, so the little light has been going off, so we are actually going to bring this to a close. I just want to thank, again, a big thank you to PACT for sponsoring this session. I'd love to ask if you could all please clear the room quickly, no autographs. So the team can set up the next session, which is the pitch competition. Put your money where your mouth is at 2 p.m. It's such a good session. Don't miss it. It's really great fun. There's plenty of tea and coffee and food over at the Hubs, sponsored by Omens Studios. Thank you so much.